tracking strong winds in the overnight hours. We've got a wind advisory in effect. That and the rest of your forecast coming up.
Tonight we are remembering a Grant County Sheriff's deputy who died after contracting COVID-19. What does loved ones say about his life and legacy?
Well, when I picked it up yesterday, I thought it was junk mail.
And the second round of stimulus checks now being delivered to some Americans a little differently, and it's causing a lot of confusion. In fact, they're being sent out on Visa debit cards, and some people are even throwing them away thinking it's a scam.
Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 5. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
Welcome everyone, I'm Whitney Ward. Much of the inland Northwest expected to experience high winds tonight and tomorrow. A wind advisory is actually in effect from tomorrow at 2 a.m. until tomorrow night at 7.
Tom, Sherry, how strong are the winds are we talking? Are we expecting any damage around here?
We possibly could get some damage depending on the intensity of the strength of these winds, but we have some forecasts now. The winds could be anywhere between 50 and 60 miles per hour in the Spokane area. We think mostly around 50 miles an hour. Now you notice the wind advisory for the Spokane area expires at 4 p.m., but over northern Idaho and down into the Palouse it'll be going until 7 p.m. And we've also got, because of the tremendous amount of rain and warm weather over in the Okanagan Highlands, the northern Cascades, we've got an avalanche warning in effect as well. So, we've just had weather that looks more like March than January. And look at the temperature right there, 10 degrees above our normal daytime high. The wind isn't terrible, only out of the south at 13 miles per hour. I don't think we'll see the strongest wind gusts until after midnight tonight. There you can see some of the winds around the region. Not too terrible. Down in Pullman, 20 mile per hour winds. And the rain, that soaking rain, finally drying out, but it's going to roll in again with this next frontal system by about 10 o'clock tonight. Soaking rain will be all across the inland Northwest, and that's when the strongest winds will begin to pick up, especially after midnight. And look at the overnight low, 39 degrees. And who would think in January that we'd see a daytime high of 48 degrees? So the only silver lining in this is that I think we're going to see some sunshine by mid-morning tomorrow and then continuing through the afternoon hours. For the weekend, finally, we begin to see some cooler temperatures. We start stabilizing that snowpack in the mountains with overnight lows below freezing, daytime highs in the upper 30s. Stick around. I'm going to run the Future Tracker wind gusts for you. I'll show you just when the strongest winds arrive here in the inland Northwest. That's just minutes away.
Tom, I'm looking forward to seeing the sunshine return again.
Oh, yes.
My goodness. Okay. In the meantime, though, as Tom mentioned, those winds are expected to pick up tonight.
Yes, so we want to turn right to meteorologist Thomas Patrick tonight for the current conditions that could actually make this wind a very damaging event. Thomas?
Yeah, we're in the Manitou Park area near Manitou Boulevard, and the winds have slightly increased since last hour, and I think it'll be a slow acceleration from now until about midnight tonight, because as Tom mentioned, I think the strongest winds are going to be at some point during the morning hours tomorrow. But when it comes to the damage that we are potentially expecting during this upcoming event, well, it just depends on how the trees are looking right now. Obviously, it's the middle of winter time. The deciduous trees have dropped a lot of their leaves, so those less susceptible to the more violent winds, but certainly tree branches probably more likely to snap off than, say, the entire trees uprooted themselves. But some ponderosa pines, which have the needles, might grab a little bit more of that wind, and those might be more susceptible to more violent wind damage. So it's really just a mixture of just what kind of trees, how many trees, are they near power lines to cause power outages, and just how strong those winds are going to be, especially through the morning hours tomorrow. So those are all the factors that we're just keeping an eye on, especially over the next 12 to 24 hours. But for the time being, as mentioned, it's that slow acceleration from those winds, because it feels just like a gentle breeze right now, but we know it's going to get a lot worse by the time we get to much later tonight, and certainly by tomorrow morning. Reporting from Spokane, I'm meteorologist Thomas Patrick. Back to you.
Thomas, thank you so much. And Avista is also preparing for the storm. We're told that crews have warehouse supplies in place. Assessment teams and wire guard teams are standing by to keep people away from downed power lines. And the tree crews are ready to deploy wherever the winds hit the hardest. The utility company also wants to warn customers if widespread outages do happen. Restoration can't happen until after the storm has passed. And of course, depending on the severity, it could be several more days before they get to your area. Another story tonight, a Grant County Sheriff's deputy has passed away after contracting COVID-19. His name was John Melvin. He had severe symptoms, including fever, shortness of breath, and tightness in his chest.
Fellow deputies say he pretended he was okay to save them from worrying.
You know, he kept reassuring everybody from family to agency that he's good. I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Family members were concerned about his well-being when he didn't pick up the phone, so colleagues went to check on him and found that he'd passed away. Our Morgan Trow spoke with the sheriff's office about the deputy and his legacy. She'll have much more on this story coming up tonight at 6 o'clock.
Governor Jay Inslee's new reopening plan for Washington is now in effect, so every region in the state is currently under phase 1.
To move on to phase 2, the region must meet the following 4 criteria: 10% decreasing trend in case rates, 10% decrease in coronavirus hospital admission rates, ICU occupancy less than 90%, and test positivity rate that's less than 10%. In phase 1, indoor social gatherings are prohibited. Indoor worship services, retail stores, and professional or personal services are limited to 25% capacity. Indoor dining remains prohibited, and outdoor dining is limited to 6 people per table or 2 households per table.
Now, at last Friday, the Eastern Washington region had only met 2 of the 4 requirements. The region did satisfy the case rate decrease and the ICU capacity marks, but failed when it came to decreasing hospitalizations and our positivity rate. Those metrics for each region will be updated on the Washington State Department of Health Risk Assessment Dashboard. They're going to look at the data every Friday. Then they will move regions into new phases, whether it's forward or backward, the following Monday based on that week's metrics.
Meantime, today, the Panhandle Health District is reporting 256 new coronavirus cases. No new deaths have been reported. 85 people are in the hospital. There are 77 patients hospitalized at Kootenai Health alone, and 24 of those patients require critical care.
Now tonight, the Inland Northwest is home to a new COVID-19 vaccine trial. Multicare will test the Novavax on thousands of volunteers from right here in the Inland Northwest.
It is looking to recruit 300 people. Tonight, researchers and doctors will be able to answer any of your questions during a town hall. That starts at 5:30 tonight. Anyone interested needs to register online beforehand. For that link to register, just text the word trial to 509-448-2000 and we'll send that information directly to your phone. In other news, the Spokane City Council passed an ordinance last night aimed at keeping armed militias from gathering at demonstrations in Spokane. Now, to be clear, this was all in the works long before last week's insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The
ordinance mirrors state law and places restrictions on unauthorized private militias in public. But is it actually enforceable? Tonight, KREM 2's political reporter Casey Decker has some answers.
Everybody stay down! Get down!
Political violence is on everyone's mind right now, and with Joe Biden's inauguration around the corner, Spokane city leaders are concerned about the return of the sorts of armed groups we saw roaming the streets during protests last summer.
Rather than be reactive, I'd rather be proactive and anticipate so that we're not caught off guard.
Spokane City Council passed an ordinance last night targeted at deterring such groups. It takes an existing state law pertaining to militias and makes it city code as well. That law says, quote, "No organized body other than the recognized militia organizations of this state shall associate themselves together as a military company or organize or parade in public with firearms."
So if it's already state law, why make it city law as well? Well, in part because the person who's in charge of prosecuting the state law here in Spokane has said doing so is all but impossible.
County Prosecutor Larry Haskell has repeatedly raised concerns about this specific law. He says basically that it's really hard to determine that any particular group of people counts as an unrecognized militia, and even harder to do so without violating their rights.
Militias are mentioned nearly 100 times in the United States Constitution, so they're part of the long, and I call it a storied and honored history of the armed citizen in the United States.
So given that Haskell is unlikely to prosecute, council passed the ordinance to make city prosecutors in charge of doing so instead. Still, the law can be kind of ambiguous and confusing, and for the Spokane Police Department, there may be better ways to keep armed groups in check.
There are lots and lots of laws on the books that are available to us that we can use and enforce to stop people from committing crimes once they begin to do so, once they break laws. So in regards to this specifically, we've never used it, and I have not seen anything at this point that would indicate a necessity for it, because if people were to begin to break the law, again, we will enforce those laws and take action and stop that behavior.
Councilmember Lori Kinnear says she'll meet with Chief Craig Meidel to help reduce the ambiguity. Another reason passing the ordinance at the city level is helpful.
I think it's very important to have this on the books right now. I think it sends a message. I think it shows that we're united against this type of behavior, and we're not going to tolerate our community being intimidated.
Casey Decker, KREM 2 News.
Still ahead tonight, confusion over how the government is getting people their stimulus money, especially if your stimulus money arrived on a preloaded debit card. We'll have answers to your questions coming up next.